Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vacharam pangam langyate girim yatkrapatamam vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So we were discussing about this is the chapter 21, instructions by Prithu Maharaj, and we had done the first part of the chapter, which was the welcome of the citizens to Prithu Maharaj. And then Maitreya is describing the glories of the rule of Prithu Maharaj, which is where we were. And following that is the section of instructions by Prithu Maharaj to his citizens. So we are at verse 16. Yudhavaksha brahakshronye valival gadalodraha avartanabhirojasvi kanachanurudgarpat. The chest of Maharaj Prithu was very broad, and his waist was very thick, and his abdomen, wrinkled by lines of skin, resembled in construction a leaf of a banyan tree. His navel was coiled and deep, his thighs were of a golden hue, and his instep was arched. So Udgarpat, that his instep was arched. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Udgarpat or arch instep indicates that the four parts of his feet were raised. So basically, it means that he didn't have flat feet. Some people are born, and some people, because of physical exertion, they get a flat feet. The sole of the feet is flat. It touches the ground at all points. And in his case, it is described that it was arched, which is considered to be a sign of beauty. And other than that, his physique is described, that he had a broad chest, a thick waist, and his abdomen was muscled like the banyan tree. Okay, verse 17. Sukshma vakra sita snigdha murdajakam mukandharaha mahadane dukulagre paridhayo pavivyacha. The black slick hair on his head were very fine and curly, and his neck, like a conch shell, was decorated with auspicious lines. He wore a very valuable dhoti, and there was a nice wrapper on the upper part of his body. So you can recognize that this is also how devotees dress, specifically brahmacharis. Prithu Maharaj was grasta, but the dhoti and the paridhaya is what is known as the uttara, something that covers the upper part of the body. Verse 18. Vyajita sheshagatra sri niyamenyastabhushanaha Krishna jindhara srima kushpani kratochitaha. As Maharaj Prithu was being initiated to perform the sacrifice, he had to leave aside his valuable dress, and therefore his natural bodily beauty was visible. It was very pleasing to see him put on a black deer skin and wear a ring of kusha grass on his finger. For this increased the natural beauty of his body. It appears that Maharaj Prithu observed all the regulative principles before he performed the sacrifice. Verse 19. Shishara snegdhataraksha smekshata samantataha uchivanidam urvishaha sada samharshayanniva. Just to encourage the members of the assembly and to enhance their pleasure, King Prithu glanced over them with eyes that seemed like stars in a sky wet with dew. He then spoke to them in a great voice. So now, from the next verse begins the instructions by Maharaj Prithu. Verse 20. Charu chitrapradam salakshanam mristam gudam aviklavam sarvesham upakarartham tada anu vadanneva. Maharaj Prithu's speech was very beautiful, full of metaphoric language, clearly understandable and very pleasing to hear. His words were all grave and certain. It appears that when he spoke, he expressed his personal realization of the absolute truth in order to benefit all who were present. Srila Prabhupada writes that Maharaj Prithu was beautiful in his external bodily features, and his speech was also very glorious in all respects. His words, which were nicely composed in highly metaphorical, ornamental language, was pleasing to hear and were not only mellow, but were also very clearly understandable and without doubt or ambiguity. So this verse gives a concise description of the art of speaking. So what are the qualities of good speech? That one should be clearly understandable. So clearly understandable means that one should not mumble or speak in a slurred way or confuse the enunciation of the words, but one should be audible, clearly understandable. So this is in terms of the voice. Then what about the contents? So pleasing. Important that it should be pleasing, because harsh speech, it closes the heart right away. Even if the person is saying something valuable, if it is delivered in a harsh manner, in an arrogant manner, in a way that is insulting, then the contents will not be delivered. Srila Prabhupada would show this by example and also instruct to his disciples that speak the truth, but speak in a pleasing way. So the speech should be pleasing. Then he says, Maitreya describes that decorated with metaphors. The metaphors are considered to be ornaments. Now, sometimes metaphors are confused to be indirection. That one speaks with metaphors, and most of the people are not able to understand the symbolism behind it. So from this we understand that the metaphors are not meant to confuse the person, but they're actually meant to to explain what is being said even further. So the advantage of using metaphors is that when you use the symbolism of the metaphors, like in the previous verse, it said that his eyes were like fresh dew. So it's more of a simile than a metaphor, but the point again is that one knows what fresh dew looks like. And when his eyes are described with fresh dew, then it automatically paints a picture in your mind that it is sparkling, it is pure and pleasing. So similarly, metaphors are commonly understood symbols that carry with them a lot of import. So one does not have to speak so much, like the elephant-like king, right? So one knows the qualities of the elephant as being strong and well-built. So many adjectives are automatically transmitted through the metaphor. So that's why these are known as ornaments, that they decorate the speech, but also carry valuable import within them. Now, what are the other qualities? That he spoke in a grave manner. So it's not that he spoke and he giggled at the same time, or he spoke in a flighty way. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see when Krishna begins to speak the Bhagavad Gita, then Iva Prahasana. It's said that the Lord smiling. So Iva Prahasana is like smiling, which means that he was smiling earlier on, but then he became grave, understanding that now he has to speak the Gita. Then without hesitation. So without hesitation means that the person speaks, but does not stammer, does not repeat, does not introduce a lot of useless verbiage in it. And sometimes people say, and then they'll repeat the same thing again, they'll hesitate, repeat the same thing again, or they'll use filler words over and over again. So without hesitation, then filled with personal realizations. Right? So why is the speech so much attractive? Because it is not just repeating words or instructions from somewhere. So when one speaks along with personal realization, then the content becomes even sweeter. In the first canto, first chapter of the Bhagavatam, that's how Srimad Bhagavatam is described, right? That it has become like when a parrot beaks a fruit and the fruit becomes sweeter, the fruit of the Vedic scriptures has become sweeter because it is being delivered by the mouth of Sukha Goswami. So not just the fact that he has spoken it, but what it means is that it has also been sweetened by his personal realizations. When we sit for a Sunday PS class, and senior devotees, when they sit and they talk about the times with Srila Prabhupada or other incidents, other personalizations, the class goes off like in no time, because they're not only attractive, but they also establish a bond with the audience. The ears are opened, the heart's opened. So Prithu Maharaj is speaking filled with personalizations. Who is he speaking about? What is the subject that is most worthy of being spoken about? The Supreme Lord. And the last quality of speech is that it is for the benefit of everyone. So it's not idle talk. It's not criticism. It's not prajalpa. but it is for the real benefit of everyone. So all these are qualities of a good speech. Okay. So let's see what Maharaj Prithu is saying from verse 21. Rajavacha sabhyashnot bhadram va sadavo ya ihagataha satsu jigyasu bidharmam avedyam swamaneshitam. King Prithu said, O gentle members of the assembly, may all good fortune be upon you. May all of you great souls who have come to attend this meeting kindly hear my prayer attentively. A person who is actually inquisitive must present his decision before an assembly of noble souls. So Prithu Maharaj begins first with glorifying the audience. So he says that, gentle members of the assembly, all good fortune upon you, that you are sadhavas. Sadhava means that you are all great souls. So this is not flattery, but this is a genuine recognition of people who have come to participate in Krishna Katha. So it is said that the foremost quality of a speaker is to have genuine appreciation for the audience, specifically in a spiritual setting, otherwise also, but specifically in a spiritual setting. So in the Bhagavatam, we'll see that over and over, the speaker expresses so much of gratitude towards the other person. Maitreya constantly keeps glorifying Vidura. And we see that Sudha Goswami is glorifying the sages who Naimisharanya. Sukadev Goswami is glorifying Parishad Maharaj. And one might say that they are the ones who are actually giving all this knowledge, invaluable knowledge. Why do they have to flatter the other person and glorify the person? But the reason that they do it is because of genuine appreciation, that because the other person is there, they have got the opportunity to do Krishna Katha. And Krishna Katha is the greatest benediction that can be awarded to a devotee. So they recognize the fact that this person has kindly come and given me this opportunity. Once a person went to Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and the person was more of a favorably inclined, but had a job, a family, and he heard about Bhakti Vinod Thakur as being a sadhu. And then he went to Bhakti Vinod Thakur and said, Babaji, I have come to hear from you about Krishna. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur's eyes went all big. And he says, really? You have come to talk to me about Krishna? That is so nice. That is so wonderful. Thank you so much. And the reason he was speaking like that was because in his heart he had genuine appreciation for this person, that I could have been doing so many things. But because this person is kind to me, he has given me the opportunity to speak about Krishna. So Prithu Maharaj is exemplifying that mood of a devotee. Srila Prabhupada, when he comments on that, he says that when Maharaj Prithu is addressing the crowd as sadhava, that he says that even a personality of the stature of Prithu would have people who would be envious of him. Because of their envy, they would not be open to his instructions. And later on, we see that Maharaj Prithu will actually acknowledge the fact that some of the people in the assembly are envious to him, and he addresses them separately. But for now, he's addressing those whose minds and hearts are open to him. So when he says sadhava, he's essentially saying, all you people in the crowd who are favorable to spirituality, who are favorable to Krishna consciousness, who are favorable to me, please hear me. He's also saying sadhava so that people who are not favorable become favorable. It is said that when you compliment somebody, you also place expectations on the other person. So when you compliment a person that, Prabhu, you remember so many verses. In the heart, the person will say, I must now remember more verses because this quality is being appreciated. Or somebody says, you cook so this particular dish so nicely. Person says, oh, I must now go and write down the recipe so that I can repeat the cooking of this dish. And so also, in order to pacify those who may be envious of him. Then Srila Prabhupada makes another important point in the purport, which is an important point for even mundane situations. Prabhupada notes that one should resort to positional authority only as the last resort. So Prithu Maharaj was the king. As the king, he had a position of authority. And he could have leveraged that. There was no need for him to try and open the hearts and the ears of the audience. But because Prithu Maharaj is an expert king and a perfect administrator, so one of the qualities of good managers is that they will only use positional authority when everything else has failed. Otherwise, they will appeal to, they will motivate the person. They will appeal to the sense of integrity of the person. They might offer reward, appealing to the more greed and other instincts of the person. When everything fails, then they say that I'm your boss. I'm asking you to do it. You better do it. But that means everything else has failed. And on the flip side, people who tend to operate from a position of organizational hierarchy or authority, they are by nature weak managers. The statement they're making is that I have nothing else to support what I'm asking you to do. So because I have somehow been invested by this authority, I am leveraging that. So Prabhupada says that as a great king of the entire world, he could have given them orders, but he was so humble, meek and honest that he presented his statement for approval in order to clarify his mature decision. Everyone within this material world is conditioned by the modes of material nature and therefore has 4 defects. But although Prithu Maharaj was above all these, still like an ordinary conditioned soul, he presented his statements to the great souls, sages, and saintly persons present here. Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad, he brings forth another meaning of this word. And he says that from this verse, we can understand that the king was selective about who he was instructing. Now, Srila Prabhupada says that he was selective to instruct only the sadhavas, only the great souls. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that he was selective to instruct only those who were not sadhavas. So what does that mean? So Vishwanath Chakravarti's interpretation of sadhavas is those who are brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So Prithu Maharaj does not consider himself qualified to to instruct these people. And later on, towards the end of his instruction, he will actually go out of his way to glorify devotees and brahmanas as saying that they are above me. So another way of understanding it is that King Prithu was out of humility clearly saying that I am not instructing the devotees and the Brahmins, but the others who could benefit from my instructions. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the king says that my object is not the others who have gathered here. So this is when he's addressing the devotees. He says, my object is not the others who have gathered here. I cannot give instructions or orders to you since I am the king. But rather, I should ask you for instructions and orders. Since there is devotee association here, and the inquisitive should reveal topics of dharma, after consider them carefully, since they cannot come to a conclusion by themselves. So they here is pointing to they who are not Brahmanas or Vaishnavas. Okay, verse 21, 22. I'm sorry, this is not verse 22 only. Aham dandadharo raja prajanam iha yojitaha rakshita vritidasveshu setushu sthapita prathak. King Prithu continued, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, I have been appointed the king of this planet, and I carry the scepter to rule the citizens, protect them from all danger, and give them employment according to their respective position in the social order established by Vedic injunction. So continuing that mood in which Prithu Maharaj is instructing, he comments here that the purpose of the king is to serve. So when he says this, one might say that how can you say that you are serving? There are so many people that you have punished, you have put into prison, or you have chastised. And Prithu Maharaj says, yes, it is true, I am Dandadhara. So Dandadhara, Dand means punishment. So, Dand also means stick. So synonymous meaning that he carries the stick and he's the giver of punishment. But then he says, that too I am doing only for the purpose of serving. And so Prabhupada has explained that when the king punishes the citizen, everybody is benefited. The rest of the people are benefited because the disturbance being caused by the criminal is addressed. That criminal is benefited because by virtue of that punishment, the reactions of his activities are mitigated or minimized. And the king is benefited because he's doing his service. So for him, it's a pious activity. So Maharaj Prithu is making that point, that only by the grace of the Lord, I have been given this opportunity to serve you. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that one should not say we should worship the king. Rather, I have merely been appointed by the Supreme Lord as the object of worship to engage you in your occupations. So this is the second part of what he is saying, that how am I serving you? By engaging you in your occupation. Vishwanath Chakravarti continues that Maharaj Prithu says that I do these activities because I am engaged, yojita, by the Supreme Lord. I hold the stick which is like medicine for curing the sickness of sinful actions. I am employed by the Lord for protecting the citizen from thieves. I am engaged by the Lord to give occupations to the citizens. I am engaged by the Lord to establish respect for the rules of Varnashram. I am carrying on my head the weight of many types of services to you. And this is actually the main theme of the instructions of Prithu Maharaj, which is the importance of the citizens following Varnashram. And not just Varnashram, but Devi Varnashram. That is and he introduces it right at the beginning of his speech. So, according to the Vedic system, the king is a representative of the Lord and should be respected at the same level as the Lord. Right? Bhagavad Gita Krishna says that of the various classes of rulers, I am the king. Right? So he embodies the ruling potency of the Lord. But the important thing is that the king is respected as a representative of the Lord. Now we see that the father of Maharaj Prithu, he had it other way around. Rather than considering himself as a representative of the Lord, he started considering himself as the Lord. And he said that the Lord is my representative, which is the demoniac way of thinking. And what is Maharaj Prithu doing? Being empowered to represent the Lord, he is maintaining the Varnashram system. This is a point that Srila Prabhupada will stress in almost every verse of this chapter. So the chapter is 52 verses, and almost, if I remember rightly, till 44th, 45th verse, every verse Srila Prabhupada will, in some form or the other, establish, comment on the importance of the Varnashram Dharma. Here Prabhupada writes that the duty of the government is to re-establish the social order in terms of occupational duty and modes of material nature. For that will make the entire world population actually civilized. So we note the usage of words by Prabhupada. The Prabhupada is very, very specific in his words. That by following the Varnashram system, the world population will become civilized. What is the definition of civilized? Manusha Yoni, one who is living according to the instructions of the scriptures. So that is what following the Varnashram system gives us. It gives us the ability to follow the instructions of the Vedas. Because one might say that, what does it mean to live according to Vedic injunctions? What are these Vedic injunctions? There are so many of them. Sometimes they're contradicting one another and difficult to understand. But where the rubber meets the road is in the Varnashram Dharma. It's in the Varnashram Dharma that of the millions of instructions in the Vedas, the specific instructions that are meant for your Varna and your ashram are curated and applied to your situation in life. So essentially, saying that you live according to the injunctions of the Vedas is synonymous to saying that you're following the Varnashram Dharma. And Prabhupada will make this point over and over again. Now, interestingly, in the present day, there's a strong aversion to Varnashram. Why? Because it seems to support social injustice. What does the Varnashram system externally connotate? That one class of people are treated differently from another. And discrimination is a bad word, right? There are people who can file complaints claiming that they've been discriminated against, and they can get also legal redress for that. But Varnashram system is based on this notion of discrimination, that a Brahmana has to be treated differently from a Kshatriya, and a Vaishya, and Shudra. But factually, if you look at it, social discrimination is everywhere. So in democracy, what is the basis of discrimination? One's wealth. It's capitalism. Richer people, they enjoy more privileges that is afforded to them by their wealth. They eat better food, they travel in greater luxury. So one might say, why is this person getting better medical attention than the poorer person? Why is this person living in more comfort than another? This is discrimination. Yes, it is based on wealth. So when people start complaining about this wealth-based discrimination, and what came in? Communism and socialism, where they say that and this is half of a joke, when communism and socialism was introduced. So it was to basically eliminate these classes that was created by capitalism, the haves and the have-nots. So they made everybody the have-nots. So they made the rich poor, everybody was poor. But even there is discrimination based on position, power. In communism, people who are high up in the hierarchy of the Communist Party, they enjoy more privileges. So there is still discrimination. So regardless of which form of society comes, there will always be discrimination. Why? Because it is the natural order of things. So best is to follow the dictates of the scriptures. If one follows that, then the discrimination is only superficial. Essentially, everybody is making advancement, be it a Shudra or a Brahman, because they're acting in positions according to their propensity. So they are not unduly stressed. And they're also making advancement in their own position. Later on, Prithu Maharaj will make this point, that even a Shudra will get liberated. It does not have to become a Brahmana. Even a Shudra will become liberated simply by following the Varnashram Dharma of a Shudra. So they are all making advancements while they are situated in their natural position of strength. So one may say that this the modern society is egalitarian. Egalitarian means meritocracy, that it is divided on the basis of merit. So one may say that one goes to a certain school based on his academic achievement. That is meritocracy. However, when all kinds of people are competing together, there will be always some successes and some failures. In a culture that is only based on meritocracy, those who fail end up in a very dangerous situation, because they consider themselves outside the realm of the society. In the Varnashram system, nobody fails. There is a place for everyone. So imagine, like in India, you have the IITs, which are very, very difficult to get in. Now imagine if there was only IITs, there were no other engineering schools. So people would say compete, in the IITs, and those who got in, and those who did not, then they had nowhere else to go. For them, it would be a very difficult, frustrating situation that they wanted to become engineers. They could not go into the IIT, so there's no recourse for them. But in Varnashram, in addition to the IITs, there are the regional engineering colleges, the local engineering colleges, the second-tier engineering colleges. So there is a place for everyone according to their qualities, qualifications. So they are happy over there. They're competing amongst those who are similarly advanced, and they excel over there. Right? So same thing happens in Varnashram. So the next question, I just want to talk a little bit about Varnashram up front. After that, we'll pause for discussion, because all these points will be made by Prithu Maharaj. And I want to establish a little bit of a framework so that as we speak, we can relate to it. So we've established that why is the Varnashram system the best? Because firstly, there is a natural division in the society. It follows it, which means that Varnashram is the inherent nature of civilization. Varnashram, it allows for people to act according to their own propensity and desires. And most importantly, it gives everybody an opportunity, equal opportunity to make advancement. That defeats the discrimination argument. Discrimination is when you give additional privileges to someone. Varnashram, everybody gets the same amount of privileges. Now, the question might come that who determines the allocation of the people in the various varnas? And the answer is the people themselves, based on their own guna and karma. So this is not externally imposed, but this is inherently developed. Now, Prabhupada in the purport, when he speaks about Varnashram, he will generally speak about Devi Varnashram. In Devi Varnashram, the process of Varnashram is used to make spiritual advancements. So both the material and the spiritual tracks will run in parallel. The person may be a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and the person may be a Kanishta, Madhyam, or a Uttamadhikari. And in this way, a Shudra could be an Uttamadhikari and a Brahman could be a Kanishtadhikari. That is the process of Devi Varnashram. So in Devi Varnashram, for instance, in the Brahma Muhurt, the Brahmanas and the Shudras will go to the temple and worship the Lord together. They will chant together, they will honor prasadam together, and then after that, the Brahmana will go and do his Brahmanical duties, which is performing yagyas or teaching, and the Shudra will do his Shudra duties, which may be serving others. So the misconception of the distinction between Brahmanas and Shudras, especially for Indians, is because they tend to superimpose the caste system on the Varnashram system. And the caste system does not have any scriptural basis. The caste system is a deviation of the Varnashram system. The caste system is one of the reasons why the Vedas were rejected, because it is a misrepresentation of the Varnashram system. The main reason, of course, was meat eating, but so many things from the Vedas were being misinterpreted. And that's why Lord Buddha rejected the Vedas. Caste system is one of them. Once a group of ISKCON devotees, they went to visit one of the Goswami temples in Vrindavan. And they went there and gave obeisances to the deities. They sat and chanted and did kirtan. So the whoever the Goswami of the temple was, he was very much impressed by the sincerity of the devotees. And he said that we pray that in your next birth, you take birth as a Brahmana. When the devotees went back and they were sharing this with Srila Prabhupada said that you should pray that those Goswamis take birth as hippies in San Francisco so that they can join the ISKCON movement and go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada had this very keen understanding of the whole understanding of Varnashram. So in all cases, Varnashram creates an ambience so as to allow for a devotee, allow for a person to execute his duties. It also provides a very strong support system. So in 1976, Srila Prabhupada he was beginning to get very sick just 1 year before his disappearance. And then he once was talking to his disciples and he said, I want to go to Gita Nagari. And Burijan Prabhu says, why? He says, I want to establish Varnashram Dharma over there. So then Burijan Prabhu said, but Srila Prabhupada, are not devotees beyond Varnashram? And Srila Prabhupada, with his cane, he hit the ground for emphasis. And he says, then why are so many falling? So Prabhupada made this point that while Varnashram is neither a necessary or a sufficient condition to practice spirituality, it is nevertheless a conducive factor. It creates the ambience by which devotional service can be executed specifically by sadhakas. So without Varnashram, people may progress or they may fall down if they're just practicing devotion. But if they are following Daivi Varnashram, then there is only progress. There is never any decline. Why? Because the Varnashram part of it protects you from sinful activities. That's the whole purpose of Varnashram. That by adhering to the scriptural injunctions, you are protected from sinful activities. The Devi part of it will help you make spiritual advancements. So there is only progress, no decline. In the 7th canto, Hiranyakashipu, when he is going to perform austerities, and he is sharing with his ministers that he says that if I fail in my performance, there is no harm because my progress will still be preserved. So this is the realization of a person who is going to perform austerities to kill Lord Vishnu. So how much more so if a person is practicing Varnashram for the purpose of serving Lord Vishnu? That is the power of Daivi. The nature of Varnashram is empowering in diversity, is recognizing the fact that everyone is unique in their own way, and in that way allowing them to execute activities that is most conducive. Now, Krishna, he works in an autocratic manner, right? So he may work in a manner that is fair and observable and repeatable, but that is his choice. The point is that somebody might say, if Krishna is supreme, then why doesn't he make everybody the same? So that there is no need for Varnashram. And the answer is yes. If Krishna wants to do it, he does it. But Krishna, he does in a way that He understands. That's why he's called Achuta. He's inconceivable. So the point is that by the Lord's arrangement, there will always be differences between people. And we know a little bit why the difference is there, because Krishna is the king of rasas. And the rasas, the mellifluence of rasa comes when there is variety. So there will always be differences. And the varnashram system is designed to leverage this difference and give the person the greatest advantage, both from a material and a spiritual platform. So in the purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada calls those who ignore the scripturally mandated varnashram as atheists and fools, who are creating a very dangerous situation for everyone. And he quotes Bhagavatam 1-13, where it says the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for their own occupation, according to the caste and division. And in 1-8, the opposite prohibition is given. Right? The occupational activities that a man performs as useless labor unless they do not provoke attraction to the Lord. So this is a not so brief intro of varnashram that wanted to give to cover the points that are going to be. Some of them are more implicit, but I wanted to cover those points, and some of them will be made more explicitly. So I'll pause over here and see what discussion we have.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Varnashram was very dear to Srila Prabhupada, as we see in many places. Wherever this topic comes, he talked about it. And but what I wanted to know, maybe I'm not aware, is there any initiation or any project to establish like he wanted to do in Gitanagari? Is there anything being done on that respect?
Thank you, Prabhu. So there are several initiatives that are going on to educate people about Varnashram. So Varnashram kind of within ISKCON, it went through a little bit of what was right. It got a bad rap because Varnashram is there's a strong material component in Varnashram, that one acts according to one's material qualities. Intrinsically, everybody is a soul, and Varnashram is acknowledging the fact that the soul is conditioned by the modes of material nature. So there was a strong sense of rejecting Varnashram. And only now, I would say 5-6 years, the more forward-looking leaders are talking openly about Varnashram. Rampal Maharaj did a whole seminar on Varnashram in Gitanagari. And there he right away said that we are doing a seminar on something that some years ago may have been considered as blasphemous. If you're calling a collection of devotees, do Krishna Katha, you do Harinam Sankirtan, chant the glories of the holy name. But if you're talking Varnashram, that means too much attention to material. And then, of course, he went around to explain why Varnashram is important. There is a sannyasi in Australia, and I'm forgetting his name now, who has written a book, and he spoke in the seminar also. He's somewhat of an authority on Varnashram.
Amrita Maharaj? Devamrita Maharaj?
Devamrita Swami. Thank you, Prabhu. So Devamrita Swami, he spoke in that seminar. He has a good elevated background. He's from Princeton and has read Prabhupada's books very, very nicely. Written books also on Varnashram, and there were other speakers also, especially with. So if you see over the last 50 years, the demographics of ISKCON has changed. That earlier on, being part of ISKCON meant that you live in the temple. You give up everything, you live in the temple. So there was no question of Varnashram. You're either living in the temple 24 hours serving the Lord, or you're not part of ISKCON. Now there are not that many people living in the temple. Most of the people are congregation members serving from outside and holding jobs, families, doing the other work that is related to the position in the society. So commensurate to that, acknowledgement for understanding and implementing the Varnashram has also increased. Prabhupada was, even when the movement was entirely comprised of brahmacharis and sannyasis, even then he was very strongly speaking about the need for Varnashram, as we will see in the purports to this verses. So he was forward looking from that perspective. Now we are understanding the purport of what Prabhupada was saying, what he meant. Prabhupada knew that the movement will change in this way as it becomes more and more mainstream. And at that time, the need for practicing Varnashram to support the spiritual activities will become more and more. So I'm not aware of any specific resolutions. There may be some I'm not aware, maybe Paramatma Prabhu is aware of it. But I do know as a trend, leaders are now more and more acknowledging the importance of Varnashram dharma amongst devotees.
Prabhu, but doing like to enforce the Varnashram, it should not be like living in a community, like all the devotees live together. Then you can really propagate the idea, because if everybody live like 10 people live in Florida, 7 devotees live in somewhere else, and all over the place, how do we enforce that Varnashram dharma principle?
It's a good point. The understanding is that wherever the devotees are living, they're acknowledging both the principles of Varnashram and Daivi Varnashram also. So one way of understanding Varnashram is that there is a composite society in which there are Brahmanas, Satyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras that are supporting one another. To a great extent, that was Prabhupada's vision. That's why New Vrindavan and Gita Nagari came about, that these societies would be perfections of Varnashram. So the point you are making is that they would congregate to that place and then live in the perfection of Varnashram. To some extent that has happened, but not to the extent that Prabhupada had envisaged. So Prabhupada would glorify Gita Nagari and New Vrindavan, more Gita Nagari, because he said that is the future of Krishna consciousness. So why did he say that's the future? Because it supported Varnashram. Like if you go to Gita Nagari, and you will see there are some people who are tending to the cows, some people doing agriculture, some people who are more involved in administrative duties, there are priests, and they all come together, do Krishna Katha. Last year, I went there to spend 2 or 3 days, and it's very enlivening also that when you are sitting for breakfast prasadam, then so many people doing different services come together. One person is talking about he's building the barn, another person is talking about his cow, another person is saying, I read this book and this is what I realized, my realizations are, and then they would go back and for the services and then come back again, right? So there was this complementing one another, the whole notion of serving the Lord in your position, which, as you said, can happen when there is a group that is living together. If not, then you do the best that you can, right? Prabhupada would say that if you do not have the association of devotees, then you make devotees. So if you don't have enough devotees to establish varnashram, then make devotees and then establish varnashram. If that's not possible, then follow varnashram where you are. Understand where your position is in terms of your propensities and your duties, and execute them to the best of your ability. Not the ideal situation, but the acknowledgement of what is happening in a practical scenario.
Sorry, Prabhu, one last point. Yeah, it can be difficult because many people work different things, different places. But one thing that can happen, I don't know, maybe it can happen. Like when people, like, after some time, they will retire in one way or other. And of course, then our physical ability also will go down. But like if some people, in a way, like we say, at certain age, when you still have some ability, let's say you just past 50 or 55, then, this is another way that people can come live together in one community, all devotees, or we can establish, or we can even forward thinking, like we built a community, like devotees that are planning to retire. In advance, we can build something like that, and then everybody together, live in a community, even though, I don't know, some places you don't even have, the permit to have cow, but of course, it's good to have cow in a Varna ashram, how do you call that, surrounding. This is something I think it can be done, but in a different way as well.
You're absolutely right. And this is something that I can actually personally relate to, because, I'm of that age where I'm thinking of the next stage in my life. And my wife and I, we keep talking about that, which community can we join, which is most conducive to us. Should we go to Mayapur? Should we live in Vrindavan or Govardhan or New Golok Dham or Govardhan Eco Village? Some options are there, not many, and each one of them has its own peculiar or particular characteristics. But we do say that it would be good if we had more choices, if such communities were more widespread. In a way, what you're saying, in response to that, these communities are coming up. Like in Mayapur, there are large communities that are being built. Construction there is going on at a really frantic pace, because people are moving into Mayapur, buying houses, wanting to settle over there. Vrindavan is kind of saturated now, but people are buying in Govardhan there. And as I said, new communities, or newer communities, not new, like Eco Village, they're coming up. But more would be better.
Yeah, I think we should have a project in the US, because the principle is Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan to make the West propagate, give Krishna to the West, Western countries. And now if we all, after getting everything, then we go, then what will happen to the future generation of devotees in the US? We don't know.
Yes, yes, yeah. Alachua is an example of that. You live close to that, so you have first-hand experience of devotees who are congregated, and they're doing both. They're doing a lot of preaching over there, plus they're building a community of like-minded people. But like I said, there are some communities, but could definitely be many more. Many more mean that hundreds and thousands of more communities. Hopefully it will happen by the desire of devotees and by the natural flow of the requirements for bhakti. Yeah, as of now, I couldn't agree more with you, Prabhu. There's a need for that.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So there are certain prerequisites which are still in works, we can say, from the Varnashram perspective. As it is getting more matured, possibly the understanding of what our role, right? Like, frankly speaking, we don't know what Varna we are in. It's very hard to even identify ourselves. But I was much impressed by the earlier verses, Prabhu, like 19, 20, 21, where clearly Prabhupada has outlined the power of speech. So maybe that will be useful for each one of us, whether it is at work or family or anything, like how we articulate ourselves and how to present it. Maybe more details will be more helpful, if any references. But
You're right. I once met, I forget the Mataji's name. She's the mother of Radhika Raman. It's the famous Radhika Raman who was, at that time when I met, what's her name?
Arudha Mataji.
Yeah. So at that time, Radhika Raman and his brother, Gopal, something, I forget his name also, they were still in school at the time. And we were talking to Mataji, and she was making this point that she was homeschooling them, and she had come to give a homeschooling seminar at a temple. And she said she just uses the Bhagavatam to teach the children. She said everything is there in the Bhagavatam. You don't have to go out of it. And when I read Prabhupada's purports and these verses, then I can experientially understand now what Mataji meant. So whether it is the art of management, like previous chapter, right? We were talking about good managers and bad managers. Now in this chapter, Prabhupada is explaining about how to speak effectively in a way to communicate properly. Then in the rule of Maharaj Parikshit, Srila Prabhupada explains how good administrators conduct themselves. Somebody is reading the Bhagavatam, just for these qualities, they can get this quality. Somebody wants to understand science, that is given. And of course, somebody wants to understand Krishna, that is also given. So you're right. And as you're appreciating it, I was also appreciating it, that all that we need is there in the Bhagavatam and in the purports of Srila Prabhupada. We just need to be discerning enough to distill it and surrendered enough to adopt it.
Krishna,
Yes. Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the class. Like Prabhuji is saying, I was also thinking on that point, power of speech. And I also really connected with the point that you mentioned about the discriminations that we can see in democracy and following by communism. Because we see discrimination, but the primary point of discrimination is provided to us. That is very helpful. And I have two questions, Prabhuji, on Varnashram. One is like you mentioned that like the people themselves decide their own Varnashram. So there is always a chance that we miscalculate or misjudge where we belong to. And what is the controlling mechanism for channeling people rightly? And at the same time, it should not be appear like it is labeling, because I am thinking that I am Brahmin and somebody says, no, you're not Brahmin, you're Sudra. Then people get, the same discrimination aspect would come. So that is one question, how that happens in Varnashram system. And another system is like, with your explanation, we got the understanding that all the four Varnas, they are on the same pedestal. Like, because we generally think in the step by step, Brahmana highest and Sudra lowest, but the explanation makes it all of them on the same platform, and everyone can grow from their thing. And so here, how each Varna treat other Varna. So here my question is on that, because generally it is expected a king should be always respected, a Brahmana should be always respected. So it is a mandatory thing for other Varnas to do so. But the vice versa, if a Brahmana respects other people or a king respects other citizens, it appears like they are doing a favor, not like it is a mandated thing. And even if they don't, still it kind of seems like okay in societal perspective, not in Krishna's perspective. So still the discrimination on a societal aspect is still there, Prabhuji, in Varnashram, or can you share some light on that direction?
Sure. So your first question was in terms of the self-selection of people in their Varna. What happens if a person misjudges it? So self-selection, the understanding here is that the only consideration for a person belonging to a Varna is the qualities of the person. So that is how the person is self-selecting, right? It's not that the person raises the hand and says, I think I'm a Brahman, so therefore I'm a Brahman. But the qualities in the person raise the hand and say that belongs to the Brahman Varna. There is always the understanding that there is guidance provided by Guru and Sadhu. Right? So the qualities are manifesting in a person. That way the person is responsible for the selection. But the guidance is provided by the Guru and Sadhu, judging them on the basis of the Shastra. Because being very objective in your own evaluation is difficult. The person might think I'm like this, I'm like that, but the qualities do not lie. And inherent in this also is because we are so much tuned by the caste system. So we are thinking automatically that every person will say I am Brahman. Why? Because being a Brahman is superior. But if a person is self-situated, then they will say that I think I belong to this Varna because that's where I can make the most advancements. So why will a mediocre student go into an IIT even if he somehow gets admission over there? What happens if he'll go to an IIT? He'll fail over there because he's surrounded by people who are really smart. The curriculum is difficult over there. There is a certain expectation. So even if he somehow gets into it, I remember in my college, there was a couple of the students that in Delhi, it was called the capitation scandal, that there were students who had paid money and gotten into the college. One of my friends was in that scenario. And right from the first semester, I could see that he was struggling. He was struggling. He wanted very badly. He came from a rich family, so he paid his way in. And from the very first semester, he was so miserable that he would work very hard, and then the papers would come out. He would get poor marks, and fortunately for him, even though he was upset about it, that somehow there was this whole exposure of this scheme, and everybody's records were reevaluated, and he was essentially asked to leave. I didn't follow up after that, but I can bet you that he was much happier wherever he went after that. Right. So Varna system is different from caste system. It's the caste system that gives us this connotations that everybody will become a Brahmin. No, everybody will not want to become a Brahmin. A person who is chivalrous, he will want to become a Kshatriya. Right? A person who is mercantile will want to become a Vaishya. He will not want to become a Brahmin. Right? So if they're properly situated, then their qualities will speak, and the gurus and the sadhu will guide them. Right? That's the understanding. And I'm sorry, Prabhu, can you remind me of your second question?
A respect aspect among different varnas, why it is expected.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. So the understanding here is, it's a good question, Prabhu. The understanding here is that every varna is respected according to their own position. So Brahman is respected because of his position as one who is aware of the scriptures. Kshatriya is respected because they are protecting others. The respect is in different ways, right? Srila Prabhupada says that in the Vedic society, the Shudras were also treated with utmost respect. So now call somebody a Shudra, it's like giving the person a bad name, because understanding is the person can be abused and can be ordered and whatever it is. Not so in a Vedic society. In the Vedic society, the Shudras were protected at all points of time. That was the important thing, that they were afforded all kinds of protection. They did not have to worry about earning a livelihood. They did not have to worry about protection from enemy. So the Kshatriyas would take care of that, the Vaishyas would take care of that, the Brahmanas would take care of the spiritual upliftment. And those in the Shudra class, their main thing was to serve whoever they were serving, right? And that was that is how they drew respect. And then empirically also you will see that now you don't see much of it, but in older Indian families, the servants had so much of respect in their house. They were treated just like family members. Like, I think I shared this with you that when I was growing up, so when my mother was married, she came along with, it was traditional at the time, she would come with a servant, so she came with a servant. And until I was like 12 or 13 years old, I did not know that she was a servant, because she would scold us, and she would order us around. And only then, when I was 12 or 13, my elder brother said, "Oh, she's a servant." And then I started teasing her that you're a servant, and my mother got really upset at me. Don't speak like that, because she used to chastise my mother also, because she had seen my mother grow up. So and now, of course, she did the work also. She was taking care of us, etc. So we see semblances of that even now in families. But as the Vedic system is being more and more diluted, you see less and less of it. And you see the external impositions on it, that you are exploiting people or you are mistreating people. Those are deviations. That's not how it is meant to be. You can't characterize the process just based on the deviation. You have to characterize the process based on what it is meant to be as mainstream, right? And from that perspective, all the varnas were given the respect, the due respect in their respective positions, what they were doing.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Good questions. So we are almost at the end of our time, and I'm probably not going to start another verse. I know I took a long time to speak on Varnashram, did not complete that many verses, but actually I wanted to do that so that when we speak in the next set of verses, discuss them, then the context is clearly in mind. Srila Prabhupada will repeat these points over and over again for emphasis. So if there are no more questions, we can stop over here and we'll meet next Monday. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nithai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.